pop out. Oh yeah, there we go. Unable to load file. Wow. Not sure what that means. The cloud. I think the cloud's having problems, or my cloud is. Okay, welcome to the Zcash Gardening Club. I appear to have some slides, but not others. This is October 2021 edition of a monthly meeting that's all about bringing open source developers to come share their work with each other and the community around the Zcash ecosystem. So the agenda is this welcome, some announcements. We have 3 presentations. The first from yours truly will be talking about some of the tools that I used for running the latest ECC coin-weighted poll that concluded on Friday. We'll hear from Vamsi at zcashblockexplorer.com about their viewing key feature. And then we'll hear from Michael from ZECpages about the new poll feature on ZECpages. So there's sort of a theme for these. They're all related to using ZEC to participate in polls in different ways, or using tools that help with that, like the viewing key feature. And then, as always, if there's anyone who wants to share anything about an open source project they are working on, you can raise your hand or speak up in the chat. And there's a section after those 3 presenters where anyone can give a little blurb or update on a project they're working on. It can be in any state. It should be open source, and you can get folks interested or participating in your project. Then, if we have time, we have a discussion or further questions. So, without further ado, some recent announcements from around Zcash. So, Zcash D 4.5.1 has been released. It fixed some bugs that were discovered on testnet. And that is testnet for the NU5 activation. So NU5 is now in the testnet phase. We hope to see it activate in January. So that's super exciting. It will be the network activation that brings the new Halo proving system. So exciting stuff. Another news item is that ECC entered into a partnership with Protocol Labs, Filecoin Foundation, and the Ethereum Foundation to further develop Halo and improve interoperability between Ethereum, Zcash, and Filecoin. So check that out. There's a metrics thing. So the shielded pool size is now at an all-time high, and it's climbed over 900K ZEC. So that's exciting to see. There's more and more coins showing up in the shielded pool. Hopefully it's because there's growing interest and it's becoming easier and easier to use shielded Zcash. The Zcash Foundation is hosting a community call tomorrow about ZOMG, that's the Zcash Open Major Grants Committee, and the conflict of interest policy as it applies to that, and as it applies to people participating in ZOMG or running to be elected onto ZOMG. So that's tomorrow. Please check that out if you're interested. And then I don't have a link for these, but both ECC and the Zcash Foundation have recently released transparency reports that have like mainly boring financial details, but that can be very important for folks to see. So look at those if you are interested. All right, so the first presentation, let me set a timer so that I don't ramble too long because I did not prepare any slick slides for this. So this is, bear with me. Yeah, I wanted to share about 2 different sets of tools I was working on to facilitate either running the coin-weighted poll that ECC just ran. It concluded on Friday. I should have put a link to the forum thread about this poll, but if you go to the Zcash forum and look at recent threads, there's one about this coin poll. So this presentation isn't about the contents of the poll, but the tools that went into that. And so this tally coin poll is the main tool there. And then the second bit is about a different tool I started working on that's very incomplete. But the thinking of that tool is we need to make it easier and more convenient to create these polls and for people to participate in them. So this incomplete project is aiming towards making the UX easier for these polls. So let's just dive in and look at tally coin poll first. I can't see the participants, so if anyone has a question, raise your hand or speak up. Okay, so first let's pop over to GitHub and find the this repository. So the one that was used for tallying the coin poll that occurred last week is at nathan@least/tally coin poll. There are two Python scripts. One is called tally, and it uses Zcash it queries using the viewing key to see all of the submissions. And if they followed the right format, which was fairly tricky, then it would parse out the polling, like the preferences that the user specified, and then figure out which key adder that is associated with, and then build up a CSV file. And then this other tool would just upload that to Google Sheets. Let's see if I can find that Google Sheet. It is not here yet, but maybe, okay. Let me take you to the forum post itself. So here's the thread about the coin holder poll. You can see the instructions for participating are pretty clunky and cumbersome. So there's 5 steps. So first, a user has to figure out what their answer is going to be, and then they have to, figure out how to write it precisely enough for my poor little script to parse. Then you have to do this thing where you put a tiny bit of ZEC in a T address. And this is because we are, believe it or not, this is the easiest way to do this with specifically ZecWallet Lite. So we're using a behavior of ZecWallet Lite where it always shields any funds it has in T addresses whenever you make a transaction, which is great to help users shield their funds. So what we do here is we put a little bit of ZEC in a T address controlled by ZecWallet Lite, and then the user sends to the polling address, which is a shielded address I control, and they send a tiny amount because the amount doesn't really matter, and then they put in the memo what their voting preferences are. So when they send this using ZecWallet Lite, it will shield the tiny amount of ZEC that is in their T address, so that on-chain, this would be a T to Z transaction. So there is a T address associated with the vote. Once they've done that, now they need to make another transaction back to the same T address, since ZecWallet Lite just emptied it out. And this is their T address, the user's T address, so they keep this ZEC. but they're going to put ZEC here again so that the tally script can see what the balance is, because the intention of this kind of polling is to weigh the preferences based on how much ZEC is posted in that T address. So this has pros and cons. Some people like it, some people don't. That is the approach of this coin-weighted poll. And then the last step is after the poll is complete, then you can reshield your funds as a user and use them. So if we, bear with me as I jump down to figure out where the link to the results are. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, so what do the results look like? The script called tally.py generates a CSV file, and this is what that looks like if you import it directly into Google Sheets. So it has a bunch of columns, and then this first column describes whether or not the script could successfully parse out the answers for the poll and figure out which T address it came from and figure out the balance. So you see the first one, it did successfully figure out it came from this T address, it had this balance, that's in Satoshi, so it looks like a huge number. And then you see these were the votes B, C, and Y. The second row failed for some reason, and there's a bunch of reasons this can fail. And when there is a reason, the script records why it failed. So it's saying this had a memo. Oh, sorry, that's the third row. The second row failed because the first response for answer 1 didn't start with the number 1. It tells you which TX ID it was looking at, and then we go and we can see sort of the raw memo, and we see it began with test. It turns out that was me just trying to figure out how this works. And so it fails to parse, which is good because this isn't a real vote, this is a test. So this gives you sort of a feel for what the output of the script looks like. And this spreadsheet has this other piece that isn't captured in that GitHub repository. This is just Google Sheets foo, and I do not know Google Sheets that well. So this is sort of summarizing what was seen on the raw results page that was generated by the script and adding some pie charts and stuff. So that is the result. Any questions so far? If so, speak up. Let's see how much time I have left. Ooh, wow, that was almost 10 minutes. So I'm not going to dive into the guts of these, but I would like it if anyone was interested, if they dug into this and gave me feedback. And also anyone should be able to configure their Zcash and run this script to generate the same results as that official spreadsheet. And there's instructions here for how to do that. Before I yield my time, I wanted to jump over to this other repository. So this is totally incomplete. The idea of this repository called ZEC Coin Polling is to try to make it sort of standardized, like what is the memo format and what is how does coin-weighted polling work, so that people could build tools to make it easier. Because definitely one of the big drawbacks of this coin poll and the previous one we did is it's super cumbersome to use. I showed you those 5 steps that only work with ZEC Wallet Lite, and different wallets may not work that way, and it's error prone and generally not too fun. So for this ZEC coin polling, I just wanted to show, oops, here's that same repository. There's a directory called Memo Maker, and I'm going to look at this this JSON file called a ballot. So the idea with this repository is anyone could make a ballot and then share those to users. And then if users have good front-end tools that would help them safely and conveniently participate in these different polls, that would be awesome, because I would like to see a world where anyone can post a poll and anyone can participate. And we're going to hear about another approach that is further along in doing that with ZECpages later. But right now, this shows you sort of a specification of what a poll might be. So it has a version for this file format, a title for the poll, a cutoff height, and then a Z address, which receives the polling preferences, a viewing key so that anyone can follow along with the raw data if they want, and then like this little schema for poll questions. So we have here, what is the best primary color? What is the best shape? Is this the bestest poll ever, right? So it's an example poll. And now there is also this, let's see if I can find it, this JSON file called memo maker. And what that does is it lives next to your JSON file, and you can open that locally on your machine so that your voting preferences aren't leaving your machine. And it just makes this little UI. So I can say, the best color is green, triangle, dodecahedrons are the best shapes. And is this the best poll ever? No, it's not really that great. Like I said, it's incomplete. My goal for this particular prototype was to just encode a memo and Zcash URI here. Ideally, it would have a QR code, and then you could, it would simplify only the step of forming your memo and sending it to the right address, which is, I guess, steps 1 and 3 of the process we just did. So if you're interested in either of these, let me know. It was fun to work on. And let's see, that was it for me. Let's see, any thoughts or questions that I missed?
So, like, I have a question. So how much time does it usually take for the script to run? The Python script that you just showed on GitHub?
Oh, so there were 2 scripts. Tally is the one that's querying Zcashd with the viewing key and trying to parse those results. I believe it would only take a few seconds because one thing that it does is it knows the start height of the poll. And I'll just describe it. So it has like the viewing key baked into the script, because my thinking was anyone can run it and it should just work. So it has the viewing key for that specific poll baked in and the start height. And I would basically run it every few seconds. And if there was a new block, it would generate a new CSV file. So there's a different CSV file, hopefully for each block. And then the other script would upload those and then stop once it gets to the cutoff height.
Okay, cool. Just a follow-up question. You also showed a UI which was like sort of helping the user to fill their preferences on what they're going to vote. Does it take the schema and generate the HTML file dynamically, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so the second thing that I showed you was not used in the actual poll. It's just like a prototype. So I showed you a JSON file, and then there's some JavaScript that, so there's a really slim index.html that just links to the JavaScript, and it also, I forget how it's requesting, the JavaScript requests the JSON file as soon as it loads, then it parses it, and then it just dynamically adds HTML elements that correspond to the ballot structure. the piece that I was working on that's incomplete is each time the user interacts with the input elements, it would update the memo, or maybe when the user says I'm ready, it would update a memo, create a Zcash URI, and create a QR code so that they can then use like their mobile phone to send the transaction. But this doesn't handle the really awkward thing where we want to link it to a T address. So with all of this, there's definitely major improvements we could do at the protocol level to improve usability and privacy. But that tool was just working with the current protocol.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, let's move on to Vamsi. So if you'd like, I could show how I used the Zcash Block Explorer viewing key when I was testing the poll, or I can just let you run with it.
No, that will be great. It'll be good to see like how someone else is using the tool.
Okay, cool. Let me try to run a quick demo. So if I jump back here to this forum thread, let me set another timer so I don't lose track here. It has all these instructions. Here's how you participate. It's very long. And then next steps, it mentions you can take this viewing key. So I'm going to copy it into my cut buffer, then go to zcashblockexplorer.com, and then go up to tools. Can everyone see my browser? Hopefully. And go to viewing key. And now I can paste that here. I don't remember the start height, but let's just try this one and see how it works. So now I say start importing, and I wait a little bit, and then it shows me sort of a log of how it is extracting the information from the blockchain. Oh, yes, this might take a little bit, it looks like. And then check it out. It's showing me details that are encrypted on the blockchain, but I chose to share this viewing key with zcashblockexplorer.com because this is sort of a public poll anyway. And you can see, like, here are the memos, the raw memos people sent. So you don't need to use my script or anything. If you have the view key, you can look at the poll results yourself. If you wanted to figure out the weights, you would have to sort of click back on the Explorer to see where these transactions came from. And then you see if the user followed the process, then each transaction should be including a T address. Then you can go click on that T address and you can see the current balance. I don't know if you can use Zcash Block Explorer to see the balance at the older height when the snapshot occurred. But we do see that this T address had 1,305 ZAC enter and leave. So I don't know if those are all used from the poll, but this is a quick little demo that shows you you can get pretty far without needing to like write Python scripts or things like that using Zcash Block Explorer. So that's cool. And I wanted to hear a little bit about the design and implementation of that.
Okay, cool. So thanks, Nathan, for giving a quick demo. That was really cool to know like how you were using it. That was the exact intended purpose on like why exactly we wanted to have this feature at the first place. So that's really great to know. Like I'll just share my screen quickly. So is my screen visible to everyone?
Yep, I see it.
Okay. So, like, by the way, like, hi everyone. Like, I am Vamsi. I'm primarily a backend developer and a DevOps person. Like, currently, I'm working with Nighthawk Wallet team. Like, I know Aditya since my college days. Like, we are friends. So actually, in terms of Zcash Block Explorer, all the features were suggested by the community itself. So like if you see the home screen, this is pretty much a real-time view of the blockchain. Just I'll open my slides quickly. So actually, the tech stack that we use a relatively new programming language called Elixir. It is a purely functional programming language. It runs on top of it's a virtual machine called Beam, which is based on Erlang virtual machine. So like Elixir is the main programming language that we use in the backend. Actually, to interact with the Zcash daemon, we have developed a library called Zcash X, which will communicate with Zcash D using RPC methods that are exposed by the Zcash D. And as a web framework, we use a framework called Phoenix, which is based on Elixir. It's a really cool framework. It has a lot of features to build real-time user interfaces with the least amount of effort that we can have. On the front end, we use a CSS framework called Tailwind CSS. So it is a relatively new framework. It's not a framework also of sorts. It's more of a utility-based CSS classes. So the Tailwind CSS provides us with a lot of CSS classes that we can use. So if anyone is liking the UI, it is purely like thanks to Tailwind.css. Like I am primarily a backend developer, and like all the UI that you see, this is like purely due to Tailwind.css. So
nice. It looks really nice.
And specifically for the viewing key, we are heavily dependent on ZWallet Lite CLI and also Docker. And also we run a Tor instance using which we connect to other Zcash D instances. And also we expose a V3 Onion service. And for the web server, we use Nginx as it acts as a reverse proxy. And it will and also we use it to serve the static content as well. So like coming to the viewing key, like how exactly it works, like when in terms of technical aspects, like Phoenix also is a MVC framework of sorts. So whenever a user posts or requests for a viewing key, we send a post request to a controller. And the controller, in the controller, we actually create a Docker container. And while creating the container, we also set a flag to make sure the container is deleted as soon as it is done executing all the commands. So this is to maintain that we are not keeping a track of all the viewing keys that were imported in the system. So, and actually like what happens inside the Docker container is we run a ZWallet Lite CLI instance, and we import the viewing key that was entered by the user. And there is a command called a list, using which we'll get all the transactions that were done using the private key of the viewing key. So since the viewing key is derived from the private key, the viewing key is able to is enough to retrieve all the list of transactions belonging to that to the particular viewing key. And while that is happening, the Phoenix application code, it sort of tails the Docker container, and it will stream all the logs to the web page. So this happens over a WebSocket connection, and this is made possible by a feature called Phoenix Live View. So like Phoenix has an inbuilt feature to create real-time user interfaces without writing a single piece of JavaScript. So like whatever you see here, the JavaScript code is very minimal. It is almost like less than 10 lines of JavaScript code probably. So most of the work and most of the heavy lifting is done by the Phoenix framework. And like actually, in terms of like whenever the container is done to retrieve all the list of transactions, it will send a post request back to the controller, where we parse the incoming JSON and we render the list of transactions as a table. So that is pretty much the end-to-end flow of how the viewing key feature was implemented. So like we thought of there was one more approach that we wanted to try. That was depending on Zcash D. But whenever we import a viewing key to Zcash D, the indexing was a little bit slowed down. So for that particular purpose, we thought of like using ZWallet CLI, like which is quite fast to retrieve all the list of transactions. So in terms of privacy preserving features, we actually delete the container, as I mentioned earlier. The container is not persisted. You can actually see in the web page itself, like what exactly happens inside the container. We are not storing the container in any database or anything. It is just as soon as we are done with with that container, it will be deleted on its own. So that is the end-to-end flow of how the viewing key feature was implemented. If there are any questions, like please feel free to ask me.
Yeah, I noticed one. There's a Q&A widget, and then there's also text. So questions come from multiple places. But so one question was, how hard is it to run the Zcash blockexplorer.com, basically run your own local instance?
Yeah, so it is pretty easy actually. We also provide a Docker container. You can just you can clone the Docker image. You can get the Docker image from the Docker Hub. We actually publish it to Docker Hub as well. You can just run the Docker command and configure it with your Zcash D. You would have to make some small changes on your Zcash D, and also you have to configure the Zcash Block Explorer with the RPC configuration. And then like pretty much everything is already like pre-compiled inside the Docker containers.
Cool. Follow-up question.
We have actually like provided a detailed documentation for this. I can like share the screen right now. I can also like share a link to it right away. So
yeah,
this is the documentation page we have. All you have to do is like set these environment variables for your Docker container, and yeah, that's about it. I mean, like everything else is pre-compiled.
Cool.
So like I'll share the link in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's great. It's really cool to be able to use viewing keys on an Explorer, and I guess it is important for your users to think about when to do that. So, for example, like in this poll, basically the poll results are intended to be public, so the viewing key is public. Another case I'm thinking of is ZECpages board has a public viewing key, which is awesome because then you don't need to rely on the website. So those cases, it seems like a no-brainer. For cases where users need stronger privacy, it's a little bit trickier to answer, like to give them guidance, because it may depend on their particulars. But again, if users need very strong privacy, I would probably recommend not using that feature, right?
Right. Exactly.
Unless they're running their own local Explorer, which would be one way around that. Cool.
So in terms of enhancing in the future, like we have tried some approaches to run this in the local browser itself, like maybe compiling it to WASM. That is something that like we are exploring still.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it would be great to have light shielded wallets compiling to WASM and running in browsers. And I think, there's some work on that. I believe there is a grant application to do that. I'm not sure about its status yet. Cool. Thank you for sharing about how that is implemented. It's a great feature. I found it very useful. I used it initially when I was sort of testing the coin polling flow before I even started writing any scripts or setting up my own Zcash D even. It was just very convenient to help me figure out sort of the user flow first. So thanks. All right. moving along, our third presentation, so far the first two presentations have been about sort of nuts and bolts. Third presentation is from Michael from ZECpages, and ZECpages rolled out a polling feature recently, which is super awesome. It's definitely way more usable than the coin weighted poll that we just did, and similar. So I thought it would be cool to hear about what went into building out that feature, how it's been received or used so far, and any details about how it was implemented that might be interesting. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, I'm so ready. Definitely, man.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Nice to see you. I'm Michael. I built ZECpages, and as Nate just said, we added a new polling feature over at ZECpages. I'd love to show it to you. So where I've really found, I don't know, the unique value of ZECpages is in trying to smoothen some of the user experience with some of the stuff with richer UIs. And so we built a posting interface here that like builds a Zcash memo for you for a post. There's already some of that for replies, but I thought finally, I really like Twitter. I thought let's make something that's kind of like a Twitter poll. And you can see here in the post editor, there's a little button that says make a poll. And here is the poll creation interface. It's simple. It's 5 text fields. The option is there. You don't have to put in 4 options if you don't want. Let's make a poll now and see how easy it is. It's going to be, are you watching Gardening Club? Yes. No, but I catch the replay. We'll leave just a big old no. We can copy that. We take that over to Zec Wallet Lite, where we can pay the URI, which is where all this memo stuff is encoded. This is generated for me inside the app. It's a base 64 string that gets interpreted in here as some stringified JSON that's marked as a poll. This was back when I was dedicated to people writing this stuff by hand, potentially, this poll : : If I were to do this again, it'd probably all just be stringified JSON, and this would be a root key, but that's neither here nor there. See, we have a stringified JSON object. It has a queue and 4 options. Yeah, yes, no, but I'll catch the replay. No, option 4 is empty. We send this and we should create a nice new poll. I don't want to wait for block confirmations because that's a super bummer. So let's scroll on down and take a look at a poll that exists already. I don't know who added this one, but it's a fair question and I feel strongly about it. Ginger or Marianne? This is what the polls look like. We have our 4 options. The answer is obviously Marianne. It gives you a QR as well as a copyable link that you can drop into Zec Wallet, and it gives you your vote. This is keyed to the TX ID of the poll. So this is the poll's transaction ID, and this is the option. It's option 2. That's Marianne. It's the right choice. Once my funds confirm, I'll make sure this is recorded. This is my second vote. I already voted once for Marianne. And someone voted for the professor, which I respect the contrarianism. You can see in the past, earlier, I added duplicate questions to ECC's poll. Anyone could have done this, but I'll disclose that it was me. This one got the most responses. The first priority for Zcash got a pretty good turnout for change in consensus. But you can see these are the results. Each one of these is a memo. I think I make sure that the votes are at minimum this. I might discard less, like transactions with less than this. But actually, some of these votes are larger amounts. Larger amounts still count as one vote. But if you check out that viewing key, you'll see that some people staked up their voice a bit on these. Because that's not the intention of the feature, I was inspired to build this interface out just because I think it was Eran Tromer kept talking about ZECpages as a polling option. And I thought, well, we better build that out a little more thoroughly. But that was definitely supposed to be like one transaction, one vote. And so I haven't really instituted any weighting based on amounts. But feel free, because these are all keyed to the TX ID and you've got the viewing key, someone else who's interested in visualizing it can absolutely work off those weighted amounts. Let's see what else. Number 2, scalability and ZSAs both had pretty decent turnout. And almost unanimous, 11-1 on changing zip 1014. I don't think there's any other super interesting polls here. Those are definitely the most interesting polls. And have I gotten confirms? No, I've not. But anyway, this is the poll structure for a vote. You can see it's based on TXID, which I think is important. Someone suggested this. I forget what. This was an anonymous suggestion on ZECpages, like you should key to the TXID rather than your database ID. And I thought that's a very good point, because this is much easier for people to replicate as a third party. So that was pretty solid. And I will eventually adapt that for replies too, when the spirit moves me. That's basically it. It's supposed to try to be as simple as possible. If you can use URIs and you're used to the URI QRs, then it's absolutely grand. But I don't know, I've had people copy this and send like a base 64 memo, and then I have to parse it by hand or add handling on the back end. Our new poll is here. Are you watching Gardening Club? I'm gonna vote yes. I still don't have funds because it's a light wallet, but you would click yes. You get a QR you can scan, alternatively a URI you can copy, drop that into Zec wallet, and you're set to fly. I don't know if there's too much else to talk about. Any questions, any thoughts? I am amped to hear them.
All right, thanks for sharing. Okay, I don't see audience questions, but as always, I'm full of questions. So one would be, how many, well, I guess, do you know how many poll submissions there have been for each poll? Do you know that number, or can you find it easily?
For each poll, you can just sum these up. So I think this one got the best turnout. The first priority for Zcash, so that'd be 7, 22, 25, 27. 27
Cool.
votes for this one, which is pretty sick.
Yeah, nice. I love it. Okay.
Like, how do you decide the colors on the bar charts? Is it based on the number of votes that they get, or is it like something random?
They are hard coded, and they are chosen to be hard on the eyes to be consistent with the rest of ZECpages styling.
I love the colors.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, so if anyone wants to create or participate in a poll where you pay to vote, that is a really slick way to do it. Thank you. Okay, I didn't notice anyone speaking up in the past. Let me scroll through the backlog to see if anyone else wants to share. Nope, I don't see anyone. Cool. So, so now we would have any further questions or open discussion. Anyone have anything? I'm gonna wait like a minute because sometimes people are on the fence and then they're typing. So I need like elevator music. All right, I'll wait like 30 seconds because waiting it feels difficult. Oh, here we go. Here's a question from Johnny. What's the plan for Zcash Block Explorer? Will it become the flagship explorer?
So we already think it will be the flagship explorer. I mean, there is no reason why it should not be. So that's great. I mean, like if you search for Zcash Block Explorer already on Google, we are showing up in the 3rd or 4th result. So like pretty much the aim is to become the first in the listing. So definitely.
Nice. All right. I think, does that reset the 60-second timer? I think it might. Johnny was also joking that that's not very much time to type. Oh, okay. Johnny asks, what was the ZOMG grant size? I think for the Zcash Block Explorer. Do you know, Vamsi? I don't know.
How to open up the yeah, I'm just opening the forum thread, and I'll just get back after some time. Give me some time.
Okay, but it's on the forum somewhere?
Yeah, it's on the forums. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's on
okay.
the forum.
So that would be the answer. Go check out the forums, search for Zcash Block Explorer, look for threads about grants. Hope that's satisfactory. Any more? Okay. Oh, sorry. Over in the chat, I see, how is the Orchard release of Zcashd testnet going? I can take a brief stab at answering this, although I do not have a lot of detail. So the main detail I know is that Dara discovered some bugs in testnet for the consensus rules, and so that was repaired in the 4.5.1 release. And so I believe, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe testnet is currently running with Orchard activation. So that gives us about 3 months of testing before main activation. Next question, will ZebraD RPC calls be generally the same as 4.x calls? Ooh, I don't know that. I don't know that. And in fact, I would be a little bit surprised if that would be the case. So I am not a ZebraD developer, and I chat with them like maybe twice a week at the Arborist calls, which you're welcome to come to. And I believe they are talking about implementing what they call the Zebra client, but I don't know how much of that they've designed. And in order to implement that, I think they're planning on having some sort of RPC mechanism. I don't know if it'll be Zcash compatible, but I kind of hope it won't, because I kind of feel like the Zcash RPC interface is super clunky, personally. And I'm responsible for designing parts of it, so that's not shade on anyone else. Yeah, so that's that. But if you want to know, if you show up to Arborist calls, that's a great time to ask Zcash and ZebraD developers questions. A question from Chris. Orchard will activate on testnet tomorrow. Oh, this is a statement question. Orchard will activate on testnet tomorrow, roughly. So the bug was detected before it activated on the testnet. Cool. All right. So I wanted to thank everyone for coming. I hope these presentations about viewing keys and different kinds of polling, coin-related polling, were informative to folks. If you're interested, get in touch with me or the other panelists on their various projects. And I hope to see you next month. Oh, hang on. Yes, okay. Thank you all. Have a good day. See you next month.